The pods cracked open with a hiss, spewing forth clouds of icy mist. 500,000 soldiers stumbled out in a daze, warriors from a forgotten age thrust into a changed universe. They were humanity's last hope. Centuries had passed as the soldiers slept beneath the red sands of Mars, oblivious to the desperate war raging above them. The once mighty fleets of Earth had been reduced to scattered remnants, beaten back by the relentless advance of the alien Zanari. World after world fell to the invaders, until only a handful of strongholds remained. In a last, desperate gamble, Earth's leaders made the momentous decision to awaken the Cryo legions. These men and women, drawn from every nation and background, had been placed in suspended animation at the height of the conflict, preserved as a final trump card. Now, with humanity on the brink of extinction, they were being revived to turn the tide. As the disoriented soldiers were herded into briefing rooms, they struggled to come to grips with their new reality. The world they had known was gone, replaced by a war-torn shadow. Family, friends, entire nations had been swept away by the implacable advance of the Zanari. The soldiers now found themselves as strangers in a strange land, ancient warriors in a future where all seemed lost. But even as despair threatened to overwhelm them, the soldiers of the Cryo legions rallied to their duty. They were the best of the best, elite troops who had faced the Zanari in the early days of the war and lived to tell the tale. If anyone could stem the tide of the alien advance, it was them. The road ahead would be long and bloody, a desperate fight against a foe that seemed to have every advantage. But the soldiers of the Cryo legions were determined to prevail, no matter the cost, for they knew that the fate of humanity rested on their shoulders. They were the last line of defense, the final barrier standing between Earth and total annihilation. And so, as the preparations for the counterattack began, the 500,000 soldiers steeled themselves for the battles to come. They would fight with every ounce of strength and courage they possessed, driven by the knowledge that failure was not an option. For if they fell, so too would the last remnants of the human race. The Zanari had pushed humanity to the brink of destruction. Now, with the awakening of the Cryo legions, the tables were about to turn. The final charge for the future of Earth was about to begin. As the Cryo soldiers poured out of their briefing rooms, they were immediately thrust into a whirlwind of activity. Training instructors barked orders, herding the bewildered warriors to hastily erected training grounds. There was no time for rest or reflection. The need to prepare for the coming battles was too urgent. Stephen Cox shouldered his rifle as he led his team through the labyrinthine tunnels of the Zanari command post. The air was thick with the acrid stench of alien technology, a constant reminder of the strangeness of this new era. Sweat beaded on Stephen's brow as he hacked through layers of security, his fingers flying over the unfamiliar controls. Back on Earth, Marcus Reed stood before a sea of Cryo soldiers, his voice ringing with conviction. "The plan they have given us is suicide," he declared, his eyes blazing with intensity. "The Zanari will crush us like insects if we meet them head-on. We must find another way." Murmurs of assent rippled through the crowd, a growing sense of unease palpable in the air. General Petrov watched from a distance, his face hardened tightly. He had seen this kind of dissent before, and he knew the danger it posed to military order. In the depths of the Zanari command post, Stephen finally breached the central database. His eyes widened as he scanned the files, a growing sense of disbelief welling up inside him. The truth was far stranger than he could have imagined. He turned to his second-in-command, a wiry soldier named Elisa Volkov. "We have to get this information back to Earth," Stephen said urgently. "It changes everything." Elisa nodded grimly, her finger tightening on the trigger of her rifle. "Let's move," she said, "before the Zanari realize what we've found." As Stephen and his team fought their way out of the command post, the tensions among the Cryo soldiers reached a breaking point. Marcus Reed and his followers openly defied orders, refusing to participate in training exercises they deemed futile. General Petrov summoned Marcus to his office, his expression thunderous. "You are undermining the chain of command," the general growled, his voice low and dangerous. "This kind of insubordination cannot be tolerated." Marcus met the general's gaze unflinchingly. "We have a right to question orders that will lead us to our deaths," he replied evenly. "The soldiers deserve a say in their own fate." The general's fist slammed down on his desk, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the confined space. "You forget your place, soldier," he snarled. "I will not have mutiny in my ranks." Privately, however, General Petrov was deeply troubled. The intelligence brought back by Stephen Cox had shaken him to his core, forcing him to re-evaluate everything he thought he knew about the war. If the Cryo soldiers rebelled openly, it could spell disaster for the entire offensive. As he watched Marcus leave his office, the general knew he was facing an impossible choice: crack down on the dissent and risk fracturing the Cryo legions, or heed Marcus's warnings and abandon the plan that represented humanity's last hope. The fate of Earth itself hung in the balance. The tense atmosphere in General Petrov's office was shattered by the sudden blare of alarms. Red lights flashed as a voice crackled over the intercom. "Unidentified spacecraft approaching Earth. All personnel to battle stations." Marcus and the general exchanged a look of surprise before rushing out. They joined the surge of Cryo soldiers flooding the corridors, weapons at the ready. In the command center, screens displayed a sleek, alien vessel, unlike any Zanari craft they'd encountered before. "Sir, they're broadcasting on all frequencies," a communications officer reported. General Petrov nodded grimly. "Put it through." The main screen flickered to life, revealing a striking alien figure. Her iridescent scales shimmered in hues of blue and green, framing piercing violet eyes. "I am Princess Zara of the Zanari Empire," she announced, her voice melodious yet firm. "I come seeking peace." A collective gasp rippled through the room. Marcus felt his grip tighten on his rifle, years of combat training warring with disbelief. "This could be a trap," General Petrov muttered. Before anyone could respond, Stephen Cox burst into the room, his face flushed from exertion. "General, you need to see this," he panted, thrusting a data pad forward. "The intel we recovered, it changes everything." As the general scanned the information, his eyebrows rose higher and higher. He looked up at the alien princess on the screen, then back at the data pad. "Bring her in," he ordered finally, "but stay alert." Hours later, Marcus found himself seated across from Princess Zara in a hastily arranged conference room. Stephen Cox sat to his left, while General Petrov and other Earth leaders filled the remaining chairs. The air crackled with tension. "You claim to seek peace," General Petrov began, his voice skeptical. "Yet your people have waged relentless war against us for centuries." Princess Zara's violet eyes flashed. "The war is not of our making," she countered. "My father, Emperor Nausicaans, is being manipulated. A corporation known as Nebula Dynamics has orchestrated this conflict, profiting from the chaos and destruction." She leaned forward, her scales catching the light. "I propose a joint mission to expose the truth. With your help, we can reach my father and end this war once and for all." Marcus exchanged glances with Stephen. The intelligence they'd uncovered seemed to support her claims, as outlandish as they sounded. "And why should we trust you?" Marcus asked, voicing the question on everyone's minds. Princess Zara met his gaze unflinchingly. "Because the alternative is the annihilation of both our peoples. Will you take that chance, or will you fight for peace?" The room fell silent as the weight of her words sank in. Finally, General Petrov spoke. "We'll need a team, our best operatives." Marcus nodded, his mind already assembling the squad. "I'll lead it," he volunteered, "with Stephen as my second." "I'm coming too," a new voice chimed in. Olivia Sato, their top tech expert, stepped forward. "You'll need someone who can slice through Nebula's systems." Alexander Novak, a skilled diplomat, also joined the group. "We'll need a negotiator if we're to convince the Emperor," he pointed out. As the team assembled, Princess Zara outlined the plan. They would travel to the Zanari homeworld aboard her cloaked ship, infiltrate the royal palace, and present their evidence to Emperor Nausicaans. Hours later, as Earth shrank to a blue marble behind them, Marcus found himself on the bridge of the Zanari vessel. Princess Zara stood beside him, her alien features softened by the starlight. "I never thought I'd be working alongside a Zanari," Marcus admitted. The princess turned to him, a small smile playing on her lips. "And I never imagined I'd trust my life to humans," she replied. "Perhaps there is hope for us yet." As the ship accelerated towards the heart of the Zanari Empire, Marcus felt a glimmer of something he hadn't experienced in years: optimism. The mission ahead was fraught with danger, but for the first time since awakening from cryo sleep, he dared to believe that peace might be possible. The Zanari homeworld loomed before them, a swirling orb of emerald and sapphire. As they began their descent, Princess Zara's expression grew taut. "Remember," she warned, "we must move quickly and quietly. Nebula Dynamics has eyes and ears everywhere." Marcus nodded, checking his weapon one last time. Whatever lay ahead, he knew that the fate of two civilizations hung in the balance. The real battle was about to begin. The sleek Zanari vessel slipped through the atmosphere of Camus Prime, its cloaking technology rendering it invisible to the planet's advanced defense grid. Inside the cramped cargo hold, Marcus Reed checked his gear one last time, his eyes meeting those of Stephen Cox across the dim space. "Approaching drop point," Princess Zara's voice crackled through their comms. "Prepare for insertion." The floor beneath them opened with a hiss, revealing the sprawling industrial landscape of Nebula Dynamics' stronghold. Without a word, Marcus and Stephen leapt into the night air, their stealth suits activating as they fell. They landed silently on the roof of a nondescript warehouse, melting into the shadows. Olivia Sato's voice came through their earpieces, clear despite the encryption. "I've tapped into their security network. Patrols incoming from the east in 30 seconds. Marcus signaled to Stephen, and they moved swiftly across the rooftop, finding cover behind a ventilation unit just as a pair of guards rounded the corner. Once the coast was clear, they made their way to a service entrance, where Olivia's hacking skills granted them access. Inside, they met up with Jakob Harkin, the leader of the local resistance. His face was a roadmap of scars, his eyes hard with years of fighting against Nebula's oppression. "The research facility is 3 levels down," Jakob whispered, leading them through a maze of corridors. "But be warned, their security is unlike anything you've faced before." As if on cue, alarms blared throughout the complex. Red lights bathed the hallways in an eerie glow as heavily armed security forces converged on their position. "So much for stealth," Stephen muttered, raising his pulse rifle. The air filled with the sizzle of energy weapons and the staccato of gunfire. Marcus and Stephen moved in perfect sync, years of training and combat experience evident in every fluid motion. They cleared room after room, Jacob's rebels providing crucial support. Finally, they reached the central data core, a massive, pulsing column of light and circuitry. Olivia's fingers flew over the holographic interface, her face a mask of concentration as she worked to breach Nebula's firewalls. "I'm in," she announced after several tense minutes. "Downloading now." "Oh my God." Marcus looked over her shoulder, his blood running cold as he saw the plans for Nebula's bioweapon. The scale of devastation it could unleash was beyond comprehension. "We need to get this data out now," Stephen said urgently. But before they could move, a new wave of security forces burst into the room, led by a figure in gleaming powered armor. The faceplate slid back, revealing the sneering visage of Arjun Simic, CEO of Nebula Dynamics. "Did you really think you could stop us?" Simic taunted, raising a weapon that crackled with impossibly strong energy. "You're too late. The bioweapon is already primed and ready. Soon, both your pathetic races will be nothing but a memory, and Nebula will reshape the galaxy as we see fit." Marcus's mind raced, weighing their options. They were outgunned and outnumbered, with no clear path of escape. But as he looked at his comrades, human and Zanari alike, he knew they couldn't fail. The fate of two civilizations hung in the balance. With a nod to Stephen, Marcus raised his weapon. The final battle for the future of the galaxy was about to begin. Marcus tensed, his finger hovering over the trigger. Time seemed to slow as he locked eyes with Arjun Simic, the CEO's sneer etched in his mind. In that frozen moment, a deafening explosion rocked the facility. Alarms blared as chunks of ceiling rained down. Through the chaos, Marcus glimpsed a familiar silhouette, Princess Zara, leading a strike team of Zanari commandos. "Now!" Marcus roared, seizing the moment of confusion. He and Stephen opened fire, their pulse rifles cutting through the ranks of Nebula's security forces. Olivia ducked behind a console, furiously working to complete the data transfer. Jacob and his rebels engaged Simic's personal guards in close-quarters combat. Princess Zara's energy blade hummed as she carved a path through the room, her movements fluid and deadly. "The bioweapon," she shouted over the din of battle. "We must secure it." Marcus nodded, signaling to Stephen. They fought their way towards Simic, who was retreating towards a sealed vault. The CEO's powered armor deflected their shots, but Marcus could see the fear in his eyes. "It's over, Simic," Stephen growled, closing in. A stray energy blast struck the vault's control panel, causing it to malfunction. The heavy doors began to slide open, revealing a pulsing orb of sickly green energy. The bioweapon. Simic lunged for it, but Zara was faster. Her energy blade sliced through his armor, sending him crumpling to the ground. With a precise gesture, she contained the bioweapon in a shimmering force field. "We did it," Marcus breathed, the realization dawning. As the last of Nebula's forces fell, a silence settled over the room. Human soldiers, Zanari commandos, and rebel fighters stood side by side, united in victory. Olivia emerged from her makeshift shelter, holding up a data cube triumphantly. "I've got everything," she announced. "Nebula's entire operation exposed." In the days that followed, the truth spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Nebula Dynamics' machinations were laid bare, shocking both human and Zanari populations. The corporation's remaining assets were seized, its leaders arrested and brought to justice. As the dust settled, Marcus found himself standing before a gathering of Earth's leaders and Zanari diplomats. Princess Zara, now Empress Zara, addressed the assembled crowd, her voice carrying weight and hope. "Today marks a new beginning," she proclaimed. "No longer shall we be divided by fear and mistrust. Together, we will forge a future of peace and cooperation." Cheers erupted from the audience. Marcus caught Stephen's eye, seeing his own mix of relief and cautious optimism reflected there. They had done the impossible, ended a war that had raged for centuries. Weeks passed in a flurry of diplomatic meetings, reconstruction efforts, and celebration. The Cryo soldiers, once viewed with suspicion, were now hailed as heroes across human and Zanari worlds alike. As Marcus prepared for Empress Zara's coronation ceremony on the Zanari homeworld, he couldn't shake a lingering unease. Despite their victory, he knew that centuries of conflict couldn't be erased overnight. Trust would take time to build. The royal palace of Camus Prime loomed before them, its crystalline spires reaching towards the alien sky. Marcus adjusted his dress uniform, glancing at Stephen and Olivia as they disembarked from the shuttle. "Quite a sight, isn't it?" Stephen murmured, taking in the spectacle. Before Marcus could respond, a tremor shook the ground. He instinctively reached for a weapon that wasn't there, his combat instincts on high alert. A deafening roar filled the air as a fireball erupted above the palace. Screams pierced the celebratory atmosphere as debris rained down on the gathered dignitaries. "Zara!" Marcus shouted, spotting the Empress's entourage through the panicked crowd. As they sprinted towards her, dark-clad figures emerged from the chaos. Assassins, their weapons already drawn and firing into the crowd. Marcus tackled Zara to the ground as energy bolts sizzled overhead. Stephen and Olivia provided covering fire, but they were vastly outnumbered. "This way!" a Zanari royal guard called, gesturing towards a hidden passage. As they retreated into the labyrinthine corridors of the palace, the sounds of battle echoed behind them. Marcus's mind raced, trying to piece together what was happening. One thing was clear: their hard-won peace was under attack. The small group wound their way deeper into the palace, the assassins in close pursuit. Marcus knew they couldn't run forever. Somewhere in this maze of alien architecture, they would have to make a stand.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.